As the war in Ukraine continues to rage against Russia's full-scale invasion, that's, to date, closing in on 4 years. Ukraine isn't only thinking of the present, but looking to its future, and as the subject of this video, particularly in terms of its air power. On the 22nd of October 2025, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky traveled to Sweden, where he and Swedish Prime Minister Ulf Kristersson signed a joint letter of intent for Ukraine's possible purchase of between 100 and 150 of the latest Gripen fighters produced by Swedish company Saab. Many were quick to extol the Gripen's virtues, such as the Swedish combat aircraft's ability for dispersed operations and relative ease of maintenance, as particularly suited for Ukraine. It soon became clear that Ukraine had bigger ambitions, as it turned out that they are eyeing an even larger fleet and more than one fighter type. Almost a week after the signing of the LOI for the Gripen, Zelensky told journalists on the 28th of October that, quote, "We are holding parallel talks with Sweden, France, and the United States. The overall goal is a fleet of 250 new aircraft. That's our future." A 250 aircraft fleet of modern Western fighters would be comparable in size to that of a major European power such as France, Germany, or the United Kingdom. Zelensky added that 3 different new strike fighters had been selected to update Ukraine's combat aircraft fleet: Sweden's Gripen, France's Rafale, and the United States' F-16. On the 17th of November 2025, President Zelensky followed through on Ukraine's plans for its future air force as he traveled to France to sign a joint letter of intent with French President Emmanuel Macron for Ukraine's possible purchase of up to 100 Rafale fighters, produced by French company Dassault. The Rafale is the successor to France's Mirage 2000 series of fighters, of which some older samples have been donated to Ukraine. To be clear, the documents Ukraine has signed with Sweden and France are letters of intent, not contracts. LOIs are non-binding documents that lay out the intentions, not the commitments, of the signatories. Nonetheless, they provide the framework for what the parties expect to get from each other before an actual contract is signed. As of the posting of this video, Zelensky has yet to travel to the United States for the purpose of signing an LOI toward Ukraine's planned purchase of new F-16s. Maybe it's just a matter of time. This is Defense Index. If you find you like the content, please like and subscribe. The Ukrainian Air Force has been using the donated F-16s and Mirage 2000s to destroy Shahed-type kamikaze or one-way attack drones and cruise missiles, and also for ground attacks. Ukrainian and Russian aircraft typically conduct operations in airspace they control, given the density of air defenses on both sides. Ukraine to date has acknowledged the loss of at least 4 F-16s and 1 Mirage 2000. While currently helpful for Ukraine's cause, these aircraft are old, behind in technology and capability compared with Russia's more modern fighters, and are being squeezed out the last few to several years of their service lives. There is clear need for new fighter aircraft in the future. The latest version of Sweden's fighter is the Gripen E, and Swedish Prime Minister Kristersson noted that, quote, "We are talking about the latest generation, which was literally recently presented in Sweden. Production is just beginning here. Therefore, we are talking about 3 years in practice." Kristersson also said that this is the start of a long journey of 10 to 15 years. President Zelensky, though, seems to have a different idea when he wrote on Telegram in Ukrainian that, quote, "The first ones should appear next year," unquote, meaning 2026. That's contrary to what the Swedish Prime Minister said and likely unrealistic. If ever anything arrives in Ukraine in 2026, it would have to be samples that can be spared of the older, current Gripen C variant. Unless Sweden's willing to reroute to Ukraine Gripen E fighters meant to be delivered to the Swedish Air Force, but those have already been long delayed. The LOI for the possible purchase of up to 100 Rafale fighters, which would be in the latest F-4 configuration, would also be a long-term program. As reported by public broadcaster France 24, citing Macron's office, it is to be realized over a time frame of 10 years. Zelensky called the move historic. The LOI between Ukraine and France is also more encompassing, as it also includes, significantly, the possible purchase of up to 8 SAMP-TNG air defense batteries, which have a range of up to 150 kilometers against cruise missiles and aircraft, and, at a closer range, tactical ballistic missiles. The SAM-TNG is the latest version under development of the French-Italian system that's equivalent to the U.S. Patriot, of which Ukraine is also separately seeking to acquire up to 25 more batteries, to add to the several Patriot systems being used by the Ukrainian military. Ukraine currently operates 3 SAM-T batteries of the current, older non-NG version, of which 2 were donated by Italy and 1 jointly by Italy and France. Also under the LOI, Ukraine is seeking to acquire from France radar systems and various missiles, bombs, and drones. If Ukraine's plans for at least 3 different types of fighters come to fruition, it will create a more complex situation of having to operate and maintain 3 distinct types of aircraft. It would appear, though, that Ukraine is willing to accept the added complexity for variety and also simultaneous deliveries. This means Ukraine isn't tying itself down to a single delivery timeline, but banking on simultaneous deliveries of 3 different fighter types that would allow it to get hold of such a large group of 250 combat aircraft more quickly than typical. The reality, though, is that Ukraine simply can't afford the huge costs of such a potential massive order for new fighter planes. Based on previous contracts of other countries, such as Brazil for the Gripen E, India and several others for the Rafale, and Taiwan and others for the latest F-16V, the Block 70 or 72, these new fighters, to go along with long-term logistics packages to keep them flying, would roughly each cost between $150 to $200 million or 130 to 170 million euros. Thus, for a 250 fighter fleet, it could be anywhere from $37 to $50 billion or 32 to 43 billion euros. There's just no getting around it. The costs will be huge. In all likelihood, this large-scale acquisition of modern fighters depends on unlocking loans secured against hundreds of billions of euros worth of frozen Russian financial assets in Europe. The argument is that the Russian assets should be used to pay for damages caused by Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Ukraine is signaling to European countries and the U.S. that, look, these are some of the things we can buy with that huge loan secured against Russian frozen assets. At any rate, the bottom line for now is that the funding is currently not there. Now let's look at some key characteristics of the Gripen E, the Rafale F-4, and the F-16V or Block 70 or 72. All 3 aircraft are so-called 4.5 generation fighters. Their original airframe designs can be traced back to the 4th generation fighter aircraft of the 1970s to 1980s. Older F-16s and Mirage 2000s donated to Ukraine, as well as the Gripen C, are examples of these 4th-gen aircraft. The incorporation of active electronically scanned array, or AESA radar, integrated electronic warfare, other sensors such as long-range infrared search and track, enhanced avionics, high-capacity data links, and the information fusion of the various sensors all provide significant upgrades to their capabilities that the Gripen E, Rafale F-4, and F-16V are among those considered as 4.5 generation fighter aircraft. They don't incorporate low observable stealth capability, though, so they're not quite 5th generation like the U.S. strike fighter, the F-35. Both the single-engine Gripen and the twin-engine Rafale are designed around a delta wing and close-coupled canards that allow for greater maneuverability and improved low-speed performance. The Gripen E is powered by a General Electric F414G engine. The engine provides about 25% greater thrust than the GEF404 engine on the older Gripen C. The Gripen E is slightly larger with a couple extra hardpoints and greater range than the current C variant, but is still a compact-sized strike fighter. It's the lightest of the 3 fighters Ukraine is looking to acquire. The latest Gripen E variant is equipped with Italian company Leonardo's Raven ES-05 AESA radar, along with an integrated electronic warfare suite. It has an infrared search and track system for long-range passive detection of enemy aircraft. The Gripen series have a couple of standout features. First, it's designed to operate from dispersed and unprepared road bases or airstrips. Thus, even if major air bases are rendered unusable, the Gripen can operate on airstrips or highways that are 16 meters or 53 feet wide and 800 meters or under 2,700 feet long. Second, it's designed for relative ease of maintenance and support. According to manufacturer Saab, a team led by one professional technician and assisted by 5 conscript mechanics would be able to refuel and rearm a Gripen fighter for an air-to-air combat turnaround in less than 10 minutes. It's not stated how long it would take for air-to-surface combat missions, but it shouldn't be that much longer. If it were to finalize a deal for 100 to 150 of the fighters, Saab, in addition to its local production in Sweden, is reportedly considering assembly of some Gripen units in Canada in cooperation with Canadian aerospace company Bombardier. While Sweden held back on donating Gripen fighters to allow Ukraine to focus on operating F-16s, that didn't stop France from sending a small number of its own Mirage 2005F fighters, which are also being retired. France has confirmed a pledge of half a dozen units, which started arriving in February 2025. The Mirage 2005F was actually designed for air-to-air combat, but samples donated to Ukraine were modified to allow them to make use of air-to-ground weapons. In October 2025, President Emmanuel Macron announced that France would donate to Ukraine additional Mirage 2000 fighters. The number wasn't officially disclosed, but it was reported by French media that it would expand Ukraine's inventory of Mirage 2000s to between 12 and 20 units. The second fighter type that Ukraine is eyeing to acquire for its future air force is France's own successor to the Mirage 2000 series, the Dassault Rafale. The Rafale has 2 Safran M88 engines. The Rafale has a Thales RBE-2AA active electronically scanned array radar, along with the Thales Spectra electronic warfare suite. An infrared search and track system is reportedly being integrated. The Rafale has a slightly greater weight than the F-16, making it the heaviest among the 3 fighters Ukraine is eyeing. It has been marketed as a so-called omni-role aircraft because it can perform different roles, such as air-to-air combat or surface attack or reconnaissance, in the same sortie. The Rafale has seen significant export success, having been chosen by countries such as India, the United Arab Emirates, Egypt, Greece, and Indonesia, among others. These combat aircraft are only as good as the weapons they carry. New fighters would be able to make use or be better integrated with more advanced European and American weapons if these are made available to Ukraine by its Western supporters. The Gripen and Rafale can both use the Meteor Beyond Visual Range air-to-air missile, which uniquely uses ramjet propulsion to have a long range of up to 200 kilometers or 120 nautical miles. In early 2025, Sweden announced that it will integrate the Taurus missile for use with the Gripen, but this will be operational only by 2028. Taurus is the air-launched, stealthy, land-attack cruise missile the Ukrainians have been trying to get from the Germans. Taurus has a range of around 500 kilometers and uses a 2-stage penetrator warhead. The Rafale, for its part, can make use of France's Scalp air-launched, land-attack cruise missile, also known as the Storm Shadow in British service. The Rafale can also make use of AASM Hammer standoff weapons, which are bombs attached with nose-mounted GPS or laser guidance kit, and a wing-like tail extension that together allow them to be launched at targets up to 70 kilometers or 40-plus miles away. Ukraine has been using Scalp and Storm Shadow missiles, along with hammer-guided bombs that were integrated with their Soviet-era MiG-29 fighters. The Gripen E can also carry up to 4 RBS-15 anti-ship missiles, the latest version of which is the Mark IV, or the Gungnir, which has a range of around 300 kilometers. The RBS-15 also has a land attack capability. The Rafale, meanwhile, can use the French-made AM-39 Exocet anti-ship missile. The Gripen and Rafale can further carry a wide array of other missiles and bombs. In mid-2024, Ukraine started receiving old F-16s donated by a number of European countries. These were surviving samples of F-16A, part of the aircraft's Block 15, delivered way back between 1979 to 1992 and which underwent a midlife update, or MLU, in the late 1990s to early 2000s. F-16s pledged to Ukraine included 24 from the Netherlands, 19 from Denmark, and 14 from Norway. Most have been sent, and delivery of all 57 is to be completed by the end of 2025. Belgium has also pledged up to 30 F-16s, but it won't start sending these until late 2026 at the earliest, and then only gradually through 2028, as these are retired from Belgian service. The aforementioned European countries donating their old F-16s to Ukraine are all replacing them with stealthy F-35 strike fighters. Ukraine to date has acknowledged the loss of at least 4 F-16s and 1 Mirage 2000. It's no surprise that one of the other fighters on Ukraine's wish list is the latest version of the F-16. Currently produced by U.S. defense giant Lockheed Martin, the latest variant, the F-16V, or Viper, officially designated as the Block 70 or 72. The difference between the two being that the Block 70 uses the General Electric F-110 engine, and the Block 72, the Pratt & Whitney F-100 engine. The latest variant of the F-16 is equipped with the Northrop Grumman APG-83 AESA radar integrated with an internal electronic warfare system that incorporates a digital radar warning receiver and jammer technology. The F-16 Block 70 or 72 is identifiable from earlier variants by the distinctive conformal fuel tanks, or CFTs, on the upper sides of its fuselage. These carry an additional fuel, a more than 40% increase over internally carried fuel, thus extending its range. The U.S. Air Force itself does not operate the Block 70 or 72, but it has been sold, either as new aircraft or upgrades to older F-16C and D, Block 50 or 52, to countries such as Bahrain, Greece, and Taiwan. By also planning to acquire the latest version of the F-16, Ukraine would be able to potentially gain access to a large variety of American-made air-launched weapons, such as the AMRAAM air-to-air missile, including possibly the latest AIM-120D variant that has a range of up to 160 kilometers or 100 miles, the Joint Air-to-Surface Standoff Missile Extended Range, or JASSM-ER, stealthy land attack cruise missile, which can hit targets out to 930 kilometers or 500 nautical miles. The Advanced Anti-Radiation Guided Missile, Extended Range, or AARGM-ER, which can destroy enemy radar up to 200 kilometers or 120 plus miles away, and various other missiles and bombs. To conclude, Ukraine is thinking ahead, investing in its long-term defense posture, not only limiting itself to emergency measures. As it is, as a high-intensity conflict rages in Ukraine, new aircraft would take quite a long time to reach full operational capability. Thus, an immediate wartime impact is not to be expected. The letters of intent that Ukraine has signed with Sweden and France are important symbolically and for laying out clear expectations, but, of course, actual contracts must still be agreed for all the fighters that would be procured. And it will always come back to funding. Again, Ukraine cannot afford these aircraft by itself. European economies aren't exactly booming, and while increased support is possible, it's unlikely to approach the huge extent demanded by such a potential massive fighter acquisition. The United States is likely willing to sell, but isn't in a giving mood. So, it will depend on Europe making the bold move of finding a way somehow to utilize frozen Russian assets. These potential deals would reinforce Western commitment to Ukraine. It would be another sign that they are investing not just in immediate aid, but in long-term Ukrainian defense capabilities. For Ukraine, the deal is much more than acquiring jets. Ukraine is embracing the optimism that it will remain free to make such a decision. These are investments for its future security, sovereignty, and resilience. And for the wider NATO alliance, it signals continued support for Ukraine, even if the country's membership is probably still years away. It's not only about immediate relief, but about enabling long-term defense and deterrence. Although the first flight of Ukraine's future new fighters may still be years away, it's a clear reminder that the war in Ukraine is as much about tomorrow as it is about today. So, that's it for now. If you want to see more content about defense issues, yes, please, like, share, comment, and subscribe. Thank you, and see you in the other videos here on Defense Index.